So let's talk a little bit about how to make a map using Illustrator. So I'm looking at this sort of from the perspective as if I'm creating my own business or my own store or my own company, something along those lines, right? And let's say that I'm choosing a location where it's going to be placed, and maybe I'm making the map for purchasing options or building options, or perhaps even a map for my customers to know where I'm located. So first I need to figure out where am I located, right? Where am I going to build? Where am I going to exist or whatever? Let's say that I'm going to be targeting university students, and let's say that I've chosen Rice University as my location. Now obviously I need to choose exactly where on the campus I'd be trying to purchase land to open up a business or whatever. But not only that, before I actually start building the map, I need to decide sort of a key, a legend. I need to decide what exactly am I going to put on here, and what degree of categories, so to speak, am I going to have. So if I have these streets on here, and I even have like footpaths, am I going to have the footpaths on there? Am I going to have the streets? Are the streets within the campus going to differ from the streets outside of the campus? Are your minor streets going to be shown differently than your more major city streets? Depending on how much I'm showing of the map, when I get into... Where'd it go? There's a highway around here somewhere. Let's zoom out a little bit. Well, highway's a little bit further away than I thought, but if I'm zoomed out far enough, am I going to show a difference between the highway and the major streets and the smaller streets? So all of these are different things to think about and to decide, because it's going to make a difference in how you illustrate your map and how many layers you're going to have on your map. In addition to that, what types of things am I going to show on the map? Am I going to show the buildings? Am I going to show fields? Am I going to show parks? Am I going to show bodies of water? So all of those things make a difference. So you need to decide fairly early on what categories you want, because the later you decide, the more changes you're going to have to do and the more complex it's going to be. So the next thing to figure out, and it's sort of tied actually into the categories, because how zoomed in or zoomed out you are makes a difference too. How much do you want to show? Do I want to be way zoomed into the campus and just showing a specific area of it and very close in? Or do I want to be fairly zoomed out and showing more how to get there from a wider variety of the city? So that's also important too, because the easiest way to build this map is to actually take a screenshot of it and to build on top of that. So once I've figured out how much of the map I want to show, I'm on a Mac, so I can just do Command-Shift-4 to take a screenshot of my map. If you're on a PC, it's a little bit more complicated. You have to do a print screen and you have to paste into a graphic software, but on the Mac it's really easy. And now I have my screenshot here, and so now I can open Illustrator, and I can drop that in and I can work right on top of it. Let's do File New. And I'm not too worried about the size of the artboard because I can always change it. Let's see, let's drop this down to maybe 50%. And I'll just go ahead and leave it the size that it imported on its own, and I'm just going to make the artboard fit it instead of vice versa. This doesn't really matter that much. It's kind of more personal preference, because you can always export it at a higher size when you're ready to export your map as a bitmap or a JPEG or PNG or whatever format you want. Alright, so here reviewing it at 100%, looks pretty good to me. Now the first thing I want to do is we've got this map on this layer here, and I want to go ahead and make a new layer, and I want to lock this map because I don't want to accidentally move it or edit it or do anything to it. I want to keep it separate. So now with my new layer, I'm just going to grab a pen tool. Actually, hang on, let's go back to this layer, and I like to actually go to my map and I like to drop the opacity of it. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change the opacity to 50%. That tends to be what I like. Oh, try again. Nothing selected. There we go. Opacity. Maybe a little bit more for this one. Yeah, something like that. So it's a little bit easier to see what I'm drawing on top of the map. But once again, personal preference. You can decide what level of opacity is best for the way you like to work. Let's go ahead and lock that. Now we can go back to layer 2. And this part is time consuming. So essentially what you do is you just grab your pen. I prefer to use maybe like a blue, a bright blue, but you can choose whichever color works best for you. Maybe a magenta or an orange or even black. It's your choice. I like to keep the stroke on 1. And now all I do is I just zoom in and I just start drawing these streets. I'm going to start in the campus itself, since that's my main area, and then as I expand out I might decide how much I want to include and how much I don't want to include. Now, right now, as I'm doing this, I'm just going to do the small streets, and then I'll decide later what the big ones will look like, but I'm just going to draw the small ones right now so all the small ones are on the same layer, and this will make sense more later. So the pen tool is P and the selection tool is V, so I'm just going to go back and forth between the P and V hotkeys to be able to draw different parts of this. If I don't switch and now I want to draw maybe the next part of the street here, then it's going to try to create it into a shape. That's not quite what I want. So I'll just switch to V for selection tool and then back to P for the pen tool. There are other ways you can do this, but this way is pretty quick. So try to get this to look about right. So maybe there and kind of there. And there. The connection actually doesn't really matter that much as long as you get rid of the fill. So just make sure your fill is off. I know it's not really that big of a deal. Otherwise you'll be fighting that the whole time you're creating it. That goes to about there. And we have this little curve to figure out. And I'm just going to do this on all of these little streets that I want to include in my map, and it's going to take quite a bit of time. So I will continue doing this on my own, and then we will resume in the next video once I have completed it.